Okay, everybody, this is SIC Talks. This is I got to check my notes here, 110. 110, Edmond. How about that? How do you feel about being
110.
110?
1-1. A lot of good omens out on there.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it just makes me think of like 11-11.
Yeah, I mean, it's right. We only just recently passed Singles Day in China. So just very briefly, guys, before we go back to that. So Edmond Lau is here with me live from Hong Kong, where it is 1 a.m. So congratulations, Edmond, on staying up late. SIC Talks up late.
Commitment to the bit.
I do. I loved your, when I texted you, I'm like, you sure you want to do it at 1 a.m? Commitment to the bit. Um, Edmund is the uh uh man. He's the luxury memologist, as Perplexity informed me this morning. Behind Nostalgia Express and formerly the one of the co-founders of Esoteric, and he has become a sort of a favorite critical thinker among the internet's chattering classes for his essays on dark mode earlier this year, which he did in both independently and then also in conjunction with Matt Klein, former guest of the show and friend of the newsletter. Edmund, how does one become a luxury memologist?
It's kind of as with a lot of people and a lot of cultural strategists, it kind of came by accident. So I started off in my early days of my career as a like a junior art director at Ogilvy, like about I think it would have been 10 years ago now, while I was in law school. Then I became a lawyer, um, not knowing that I suppose like strategy was a path that I could have taken.
Right,
And then I
sure.
was doing esoteric yeah, once I had the itch to build something new, but I wanted to like do something that was adjacent to both I suppose like my creative spirit and then also my legal knowledge, which very like I guess like the other side of my brain. That didn't work out, but I suppose like from after doing both, um I ended up just I didn't the start didn't work out, but I ended up learning how to like I suppose like market and also just like listen and do audience profiling, all those kind of things. And then it just turned into me making memes, especially on my Twitter, as I was trying to find out what to do next. And then it started popping off, and then I kind of realized that it had come full circle in a way where it kind of
How
felt
do you
like a
mean?
lot of the different things that I'd been doing combined.
Got it. Okay, so what luxury memologist in as I said, I literally I took that from a description of you that Perplexity gave me this morning, as I was going back into a little bit of a deep dive into dark mode. Um, are you familiar with that term? Is that a term that you assigned yourself, or was that something that Perplexity made up?
I actually signed it myself. I think it took it from my my Twitter or my LinkedIn. Somebody like actually I think it was the FT. It was one of the first interviews I did for the press, and was like, "What are you?" And I was like, I make like luxury memes." And so uh she asked, I can't remember like what she asked me, but it was like, so does that mean about like memes about luxury goods or like the memes themselves are luxury? And I just like said like, you be my guest. um,
Well,
and so
that was going to be my exact question, because
yeah,
certainly in your and these I would say your memes typically take the form of these 2x2s, right? Like 4 quadrant grids with an array and 4 axes points, and they deal with the luxury market fairly frequently. Um, but you could imagine that mode of creation as a signature luxury good for which after giving them away for free for a long period of time, decide to then charge huge amounts of money for, or perhaps you're already doing that behind the paywall, so to speak.
Behind the paywall. Not quite yet. Like more on the consulting side, but I mean, it's a tempting thought there.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, our mutual touch point, Sean Monahan, has certainly made some kind of professional career out of that, and you wonder how many of the
Mm.
things that get published through 8 Ball are derivatives of or distillates of things that were presented first in client meetings. I've never asked Sean that question, but it seems logical that it would be. Likewise with yours, I could imagine. You know, corporations bringing you in and saying, okay, here is a form factor that our, um, most transactional leaders can understand, and forces them into a pattern of thought that typically would be reserved to our most cerebral and strategic thinkers. Um, and that could end up being quite valuable, I would imagine.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think Eugene Healy, like he was very kind enough to feature me in a post yesterday. And there was a
Oh
lot of
wow,
like
cool.
yeah. And I think he explained it quite well, and it was like just he mentioned it as like really cerebral like concepts, but explained it in like it's highbrow content like presented in a very dumb way. And I think that's kind of the spirit that I like to take with my content as well. It's like taking something very complicated and then turning it into something that's very concise and funny and just like doesn't take itself too seriously. Um, on one level like it's funny and it makes it accessible, but also like you said, it takes it makes it something that's like very easily understandable, like for anybody from someone doom scrolling to like let's say like an executive that only has like 20 seconds to look at something out of their insane day.
I mean, right, because they've also got to be doing TPS reports or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, dear executives, you always have more time to actually look at these things, and I am as guilty of skimming as certainly anyone in the world, but it's the truth of the matter. What I was thinking about as you were talking was the idea of that smart done stupid, stupid done smart, which is my recapitulation of the phraseology from Vice. That was essentially like the way we described many of the content pieces that were made in, let's call it the early aughts through the early tens. Um, it does have a corollary to this article that has gotten a lot of play this week in NYMag about this being the dumbest century or the dumbest time in history or whatever it is, because it illustrates the ability of, let's call it lowbrow content, to cut through and be broadly applicable. Um, and because of that ability, it needing to be a vehicle for higher brow thoughts. Um,
Mm,
I think you could argue that that has been the case in the Western world, certainly since time immemorial. The Shakespeare being a classic example of that. Like there is tons of ribaldry and lowbrow jokes and punching down and making fun of people in Shakespeare if you read it closely. Um,
mm,
if you but if you read it purely from a contemporary lens, it's all highfalutin, you know, the classics canon type stuff. Um, what I wonder about as you sit in Hong Kong is to what extent that low as a vehicle for highbrow thought is present in Eastern cultures. And I don't, if you don't feel equipped to answer it, don't. But I'm this is a fascinating thing that I've been trying to unwind a little bit lately.
I mean, I think like I personally like I'm not feel like I'm hugely equipped to answer that question. Like I've
Okay.
spent some time in Asia, but like given that I am um I'm still like hanging out with a community that's like pretty like fluent with the West, so I can't say that like there are like exact like pans of things that are repeating in in the West versus the East. Like at least insofar as like Hong Kong. like the social media use, for example, is like very similar to how it is in the West. I mean,
Hmm,
I can't speak for, what it's like over the border up in China, like mainland China. Um, but like insofar as Hong Kong, it does feel like it's still very similar, and all the same conversations are about social media and algorithmic glut, of the kind
got it.
that's been discussed in the article from a couple of days ago.
So the West Village
Yeah,
girlies then are huge in Hong Kong.
and the West Village girlies
I'm being facetious, of
are,
course, but
but you would be surprised. I mean, yesterday, like 3 or 4 days ago, I was at a workshop, a LARPing workshop actually, and they were still talking about Nick
okay.
Land. So
Okay. Wait, we're gonna have to understand what so a LARPing workshop, is that like a workshop for facilitators of live action role playing communities who are then learning how to facilitate the correct 14th century sword battle, or like what's going on there?
it was an interesting. So it was by a British artist, BSU. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. BSU. Um, I can like put a link somewhere. But
Yeah, I'll do a little googling while you go. So anyway, please
yeah.
continue.
So she was like working on like her practice, like part of her practice, like involves the investigation of like I guess like surveillance themes. And so the theme of the workshop was like counter surveillance. So Palantir, like in the era of surveillance capitalism, Palantir, for example, she was using that as a primary like example, was basically like collecting like all of this data, like collect all this data about us, and like she was pointing towards um the congressional hearings Facebook like from several years back, but and like the idea that they were creating like shadow profiles of people that hadn't even signed up for the platform based on the information that they had gathered from their friends that had. And
Yeah.
so within this LARPing workshop, it was like, how do we um use technology, or like use like the communicational methods like we use now to confuse the algorithm, or confuse um like I guess like confuse the powers that be,
Sure.
into thinking that we are into like providing with us with a set of counterfactuals, so that we can kind of evade surveillance of our actual selves.
Right.
And so throughout the workshop, yeah, we like took on the personas of a particular character that we invented ourselves, and then like interacted with each other as kind of like a quasi community.
Right. That's
Yeah.
it's fun. I mean, that it's performance as camouflage, that's a kind of
Yes, yeah.
uh, uh, a fascinating rabbit hole to dive down. To that end, I want to quickly revisit dark mode. This uh, piece that you wrote and got a lot of notoriety for. You have gotten a lot of notoriety for this year. Did that come out of some kind of epiphany, like performance as camouflage, that just came to me a second ago? Did it come as like a bolt from the sky, or did your computer switch between light mode and dark mode and you suddenly thought, wait a minute, that's what's happening? Or like how did you land at that?
I think like with Darkman, it was kind of the culmination of several factors, because I could see like amongst my peers, like there was this just overwhelming like sense of fatigue. And then there was like Sean Monahan's like boom
Sure.
boom prediction.
Sure.
Um, but I mean, like overall, like just generally, like since the pandemic, like I mean, I just saw like um an overwhelming amount of cynicism. And then when there was all of this like talk in January about like cruelty, and then I think like there was like the New York magazine like
Hmm.
Cool Kids cover, and then it just all kind of came together very very rapidly as well. And it just seemed to, and like also like the fashion examples that I'd like picked that I'd seen, like it seemed like everyone was dressing in a very like dark way and seemingly kind of overnight. And maybe that's just my own perception, but it was more the combination of like a lot of different factors coming together very quickly, rather than a single thread. But like there was no like I think one aha moment.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
We're and how have you and it's interesting, like rereading the perplexity summary again just now. It the idea around dark mode being this extension back into uh well, I mean, you could call it hedonism in a way. You could call it you know a re um embrace of our darker, more baser instincts. You could see it as a reaction to clean culture and whatever else. But what I where I was struck reading it again today was how it dovetails with a thesis that I have been you know propagating recently around the idea that we are going to return to a moment of brand funded congregation because cost of living, inflation, social, like digitally based social separation, and the inexperience of young people in social circumstances are going to make parties really fun, and brands are the only people with the money to pay for them. And also there's no like the algorithmic reach of key influencers has been depreciated. Hence Kyle
Mm.
Chayka writing about how um it's cool to have no followers now. But anyway, the way you actually get social reach now is that you put a bunch of people in the room and you sort of multiply by all of the posts. Anyway, it occurred to me, to make a very long and convoluted point slightly more succinct, that we're seeing a return to partying, and that dark mode foresaw this. Right now, since you published the piece, have you seen more corollaries pointing to it, or do you sort of find yourself in an oppositional view and say, "Oh, actually, now that I put a line in the sand, the pendulum has started swinging the other way already"?
Well, I think actually it's funny you mentioned that because I think for like a little while, like I thought the pendulum had started to like swing the other way.
Mhm.
And I saw like I was like, reading about like hope core and like return of like sincerity and all of the and like people like trying to be optimistic in dark times. Um, but but to answer your point about like partying, I mean I would personally like disagree with the point about like return to like
Oh, interesting.
brand funded congregation. But the reason why I say that is like I think, and then this is part of the document thesis as well. I think it's just trust in brands and trust in institutions. I It seems like there is I think with things like silence brand, it like mantras like that. It seems like there is a hesitance to basically kind of ascribe yourself or your personality to a brand. But just jumping back, that was a bit of an aside, but I think in terms of like I do think like we're still in dark times, and I would say like even the more like even the signals like this about um like I guess like screens or things like making us more dumb, um like pro social media or like I think there are more signals saying that suggesting that we are still kind of in this period of darkness. And I would say even that what's perhaps become more apparent is not just darkness, but like perhaps this sense of like mysticism that's emerging.
Sure. It's this
I'm
the
really
Catherine D's sort of universe of online witchery. The
mm.
internet as a spellbound magical place.
Yes, yeah, yeah. It's like it's a spell, right? Like I think I was talking about this with Patrick yesterday, but like it's a spell. Like the line, the greatest technology is like the most advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And so we've like reached a point now where it is kind of like, you know, like there's almost feels like alchemy. I mean, I'm sure you've seen that startup from a couple of days ago that was using like AI to create um, you know, digital necromancy and have you talk to like dead relatives um on on your phone. And so like
Yeah.
I mean all of these things just like it just gives this impression of like being back in medieval times, but
Sure.
like this fantasy medieval times, but actually like made real. Like the magical element isn't in our context, it's technology, but it still
Well,
exists.
it's also interesting, right? Like, is we speaking of pendulum swinging, there's an interesting thing happening, I think, in some respects, where there is enough. We are being shown through everything from data center reports from LLMs and how much material is being processed through to the release of the Epstein files that demonstrates how much is held back from us and what we are not privy to, that we start to you move from the provability and credulity of the current the scientific method into a place where you're just like, actually, I don't know what I can trust. I don't know what I can actually explain or find meaning for. So you're moving back almost into a space of myth and magic, um,
Mm, mm,
because it's
mm,
so clear that there's so much that we don't understand. Um, and that's kind of remarkable. But I think it's also, like you see that in also the rise of wellness to a certain degree, and especially psychedelic wellness, right? This notion that plant medicine can help us access parts of our brain or parts of a cosmos or spirituality. Um, yeah, all of that is it's all part of a whole that I think is hard to discern, but is coming like a planet in rotation into view.
I mean, even thinking about like the whole Chinese peptide discourse, or like there was this
Will you
company.
will you refresh me and the listeners on the Chinese peptide discourse, because I can't promise that I can speak to it confidently.
Okay, my understanding is like pretty like surface levels as well, but essentially
Okay.
like people buying gray market peptides of various varying descriptions. I think like don't quote me on B1, but like GLP-1s and like GLP-1 like analogous.
Facsimiles, sure.
Yeah. Facsimiles are like part of them, but basically like a whole bunch of different peptides that um like that are said to have like different kind of like health benefits. Like you can inject peptides to prevent a cold coming on. You can inject peptides to like lose weight, um, to have better skin. And so there's a whole discourse on Twitter about people ordering gray market peptides and then putting them in a fridge. A company in San Francisco actually has on their Friday morning breakfast, team breakfast, they take turns injecting each other with peptides from the office fridge, which they have.
That seems like the modern equivalent of the gross jar type of like homebrew experiment for lulls type beat. Um, the injection of the substances seems like a new level.
Yeah, it is a new level. Like personally, I don't
I'm just drinking my
like.
peptides here, Edmund, just so you know.
I'm just
Yeah,
drinking.
yeah.
If you put the peptides in a like it's in a well, like despite me saying I was against brand field content creation, if you maybe if you put the peptides in a fancy bottle and sell it to me for like $400, I'll be at Sephora. I'll be like hell yeah. So
I have
actually
some
I'm,
I have
I'm
some
judged.
luxury gin downstairs that speaks to
Yeah.
that. It was
Exactly.
made in a really special bathtub. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, so I don't know, maybe they're just like, maybe they're just like more advanced. I mean, it's all part of like longevity hacking, and then I guess like, the fear of death that a lot of people in Silicon Valley have, I think.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Jeremy, in the comments here has made a couple of points. One of which is the ways in which a lot of this conversation, ties to the discourse. And there was that New York Magazine article a couple of weeks ago about Angelicism '01, the COVID era soothsayer or seer of Substack, who indoctrinated a bunch of people and led a sort of intellectual movement of sorts, and then was eventually exposed to be just like some kid in a seaside town in England who was, you know, kind of performing it all as if it were, from afar. The reason that I think is interesting in that connection is because we are in the process of figuring just kind of determining the ways in which we can determine if any of this is real, and all posting our ways through it as we go.
Mm.
Um, to what extent do you feel obliged to add to that sort of discourse? I mean, are you a poster?
Poster, like, what do you mean by poster?
Somebody who is, I mean, it's this sort of like millennial identified term of people who feel like they have to express themselves and their minute to minute thoughts and activities through public platforms.
I mean, in terms of like to answer the question of like adding to the discourse, I mean, I think I've been like, to be honest, like for the past few weeks I've been thinking about that as well, because it's, like, I guess like the regularity of like posting, you seem like, once you're kind of in the public space a lot, like not a lot, but like in the public space, or in the public discourse, you kind of like feel like you have to contribute. But I'm of the opinion that like, I should shut up unless I have something that's valuable to say. So I don't think I wouldn't say I'm a poser in that sense. I mean, I guess some people like really like kind of um believe in the supremacy of their own voice. But I do
Yeah,
feel like maybe we should all like, what's that like other article? It's like we should all know less about each other.
yeah.
I think that's true. And I mean, I think, yeah, Yancey Strickler's like Dark Forest Web is like there for a reason.
It's interesting. We have been talking about this a little bit. I am going to excerpt something in the newsletter today that Kyle Raymond Fitzpatrick wrote the other day about a conversation he and I had. Uh, w- So, a little bit of humble bragging here. David Marks interviewed me for Status and Culture on Background, or not Status and Culture, sorry, for the new one for Blank Space on Background. And I am not quoted in the book, but I am acknowledged as a witness to the 21st century, along with a few other people in the sort of back of the book in the credits. And I thought that phraseology was very interesting because the idea of witnessing the century in real time as it happens is certainly an experience that we all have, and my experience with it is no more special or vaunted than anybody else's is. But it made me think about the width of aperture, or the width of the Overton window necessary to witness a century, and how its gigantic horizontality means that the verticality of anything within it has to be shrunk down to be very small. Um, I wonder, as a seer of truths and trends within that massive horizontality, do you tr- like try to slice? Do you try to actively then know less about people so that you can slice more incisively?
I think it's less knowing less about people. I do feel like there is some critical distance that's required. The longer that I might be doing this, the harder it is to like be more objective about it, because then
Sure.
you start having all of these externalities like of knowing people, or like actually like the longer you spend like immersed in trend content, like I feel like the worse you get at seeing things
The
for how
actual
they are.
trends. Right.
Yeah,
Discerning the trees for the forest. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I think in terms of like slicing things from a time perspective, not so much, but I think perhaps like slicing things from intentionally slicing things from a perspective that is objective, um, as objective as you can be. I don't believe that you can really be like truly objective. Well, anybody can be truly objective. Um, yeah, I don't. Does that answer the question?
See, I mean, sort of. I don't know. I don't know if these questions are necessarily answerable. I'm just interested to know, like, what your process is, and to what extent you even think about these things. Like, a lot of people ask me all the time, "Why do you do so many? Why do you do so many conversations?" And a lot of it is because I think this way, right? Like this, or this is the means by which I think. Like this exchange, the associative process, um, the the sort of performance aspect of it is important to me because it focuses me on what I'm actually thinking about as opposed to just all of the information I'm gathering. So I'm just
Mm,
curious.
mm. I mean,
Um,
like like to be honest, it's
oh,
like very instinctual. Like, yeah, it was just like mostly like I tend to be quite instinctual for me. I've tried to like kind of formalize the process a bit, but like it never seems to work as well as when it's just been off the cuff. I think I'm very similar to you in the aspect of like it requires some kind of conversation to spur
mhm.
the thoughts that like will turn the wheels, and also I suppose like articulate things that are bubbling on the surface.
To that end, what is your sort of information marking process? Like mine is performed very publicly through the newsletter, but I also have a like a little running list of what I call band names, but they are essentially phrases that strike me and that, just like little combinations of words or phrases or malapropisms or funny signs or whatever, and I write them down in a notes file and I refer back to it a lot. Um, do you have a means by which to do that,
I think
or
I'm like
a
definitely
favored
like
means?
a digital hoarder. So I like have like countless like arena boards or like Cosmos. Like I'm definitely one of the people that has tried like like one of every like note taking thing.
Right.
Ultimately, like what
Same.
ends up happening is just like I have like notes app, and then I think whenever I'm like thinking of creating something, it will end up like just before I fall asleep, or like I'll think of something and I have to like quickly like write it down and then it's up before I go to sleep and forget it forever. Um,
All right. So
yeah, I mean like that's
notes app Uberalis.
notes app Uberalis. Like I think in on the like the curve of like left curve, right curve, like the notes app is like both the left and the right. The middle is like I don't know, like using like whatever complicated Notion da 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 thing.
Sure.
Like I think yeah, either like use a physical notebook or like the notes app. The notes app always wins.
How do you feel like do you feel like you're and so I ask this partially because I am considerably older than you are, and I wonder if the way I behave, how much of it is like calcified experience and how much of it is, you know, well, I don't know what, like logical and contemporary. Um, do you often revisit things that you have pinned, let's say, in your arena boards, and if you do that, do you go back and go, "Oh, this is cringe," or do you go back
I
and
d-
go,
Absolutely,
"I'm really,
absolutely.
I still like that."
I especially like I've done like this kind of collaging or like things for like years and years. I recently like went back to like an old like board that I was like put together. I think it was like in like 2017. And I was just like what what was this? Like, why why was I putting this together? And I think, but it's just like if you go back and you don't find bits of it cringe, then like what have you been doing for the last however many years, right? Like it's got to be, I think finding your previous self cringe is part of
Well,
realizing that.
oh, yeah, I agree with that. I think it'll be interesting to revisit this conversation in 20 years and see, like, okay, now how does your feeling change? Because for instance, I went back through an arena board last night, and I was just like, I like this. I like all of this. I'm still into all of this. I like it all. And some of it is, let's call it cringe, and some of it's a little base, and some of it's a little cliche, but I still like it all. So maybe that's a
Sometimes it's
function of just
bangers.
of age. Yeah, well, there's that
But I
too.
think also, but also like as a function, like, sometimes getting older, like you have more of a grasp on your own personal taste and what makes you happy. And like,
That's
I
true.
think I've been going through like a big metamorphosis and a lot of change. So I guess it makes sense, like for
Interesting.
me in
What?
the
So
last like
give me
few
an example.
years.
What's an example? Like you've left behind the rollerblades and now you're strictly on ice skates, or
Yeah. I think definitely like, when I was younger, like all the old money aesthetics, like what would have been called old money aesthetic stuff,
sure,
uh, today, like was occupying a lot of like, like space of what I was wanting. But I'm actually like writing a piece right now called In Defense of New Money. Um, and it's like more just like a statement of like, okay, new money is often like framed as a pejorative. So,
sure,
but I think it doesn't like necessarily have to be like money in itself is like neutral. It's like the whole point, and like my whole point thesis is just gonna be like the whole point of being rich is you can do whatever you want. Like that's the whole point. Um, so I mean, that's an example of something like I think, looking towards like old money as this kind of like, pinnacle of like sophistication or elegance or something you should aspire to. I mean, I think those qualities can exist like um outside of like old money or money in general. I think
sure.
yeah,
Well,
they're they can be separated.
to add a vector to that. So I had a colleague who, after receiving a massive windfall, which turned out to be more on paper than in fact, but it started to go around and say that he was post-economic, meaning I've reached the level of wealth where a $4 soda and a $400,000 bottle of wine are the same thing. It's a commodity expenditure that's more about, can you deliver me the functional value of this item, because its impact on my, like, overall wealth is immaterial and
Yeah,
equal. And
yeah,
one of the things around new money is that if you adopt that, I just read Tyler, and I may screw up Tyler's pronunciation of his last name, so excuse me, Tyler, if I do. But Watamanuk, I think is how you say it. Um, I just read his history of streetwear called Bigger Than Fashion, and in it he talks about Nick Diamonds, the founder of Diamond Supply, and how Nick Diamonds was spending $3 million a year in Vegas, just cuz, like, he was grossing up a ton of money he was spending. And part of the reason for that is that you just, like, the value of money ceases to be. One of the critiques, I think, of new money is that money is not spent wisely, because
mm,
it doesn't mean anything to people who are new to it. They're just like, they have this illusion of being post-economic, and they spend it in a way that seems unwise, and so therefore that is sort of low status behavior, as our friend David Marks would say. Um,
yeah,
to but you're right that the simple spending of the thing, if you spend that money to acquire a work of art that in 100 of years is, you know, seen as canon, you made an impulsive behavior. You spent your money badly in the short term, but you contributed to culture in the long term, I guess.
Yeah, but I think also like who's to say that the way that like old, like I was like reading Sales and Culture like a couple of days ago on the plane, and I was just like having a think about like um like old money sets up all these like rules and expectations, but I mean it's all like jostling for status in the end, right? Like
Sure.
um yeah, and so I mean I don't think that like who's to say that old money is spending money in the right way either. Like, they may be spending it in the way that they perceive to be virtuous, but I think as
Well, but
we've
I mean,
seen, like that's not
sorry to cut you off. I was just going to say
yeah.
one of the reasons that old money also gets venerated is that it is so hard to keep it. They
True, true,
they end up
fair.
spending it in ways that you know deplete the money, and therefore those who are able to hang on to it for long periods of time, you know, are
But
venerated
I
because
think,
they're maybe good at it, right?
yeah. But I guess, that's not another thing. It's just like why are we venerating I understand why we venerate it because everyone like having money is like an inherent high status, like it's going to be a high status marker. But like you're also the doubt like the perhaps the way in which you are not spending money means that it's also like not necessarily like recirculating, and
Yeah,
so is it like a net positive for society? Like not saying that you have like it's your money, but like that's the whole point. Like you can do you can do what you want with it, but like I don't know if it's like I think I question the veneration of that. Like their hoarding
sure,
money is like inherently in their own self-interest. So
right. Well, it
they're
just
yeah.
hoarding behavior. Period is, and it's interesting the way. So I went to this lecture that David Marks did with Emily Sundberg last night, and one of the things that David said was like we have lost the connection between low culture and high, or low culture and high culture. The difference has been erased because that difference is always subjective, but in it we've lost the recognition that there is actually high status, where there is valuable behavior and there is not valuable behavior, or low value behavior. um and I wonder if the the idea of spending, of hoarding, is really the thing that we ought to be focused on as being low value behavior, because it benefits only like an inherently small group of people, and it's really the hoarding impulse, not the accumulation impulse, that should be
Mm,
you
mm,
know
mm.
indicted.
That's a good point. Yeah. I think that's a good point because I mean like hoarding actually like doesn't like aside from psychological function like it doesn't actually help the hoarder either, right? Like
Right.
it's just yeah.
Exactly. It's like you've hoarded this stuff. Now what? Right. And this was present in the this Bloomberg article that came out a couple of days ago about how, as the boomers begin to die and their children inherit things, there's so much crap. Like, what
Mm.
do we do with this stuff? So there's going to be a reckoning in that regard too. Um, One thing that another one of the articles that to change subjects radically. One of the other subjects or articles that you pointed out this week that you thought was interesting was the meet the hand guy or hand girls article in
The hand
GQ.
girls. We
Um,
love the hand girls.
I have to confess, I was introduced to the hand girls um, uh, via this article. Is this a phenomenon that you were previously aware of?
The hand girls have been like it's like if you ever like have gone on that on like on r/or like on Reddit, like there's always like questions be like, oh, like asking like like, ladies of Reddit, like, what do you find the most like sexiest, like, apart from that? And it's like there's like very commonly like an answer is going to be like hands, right? But it's
Okay.
very interesting, like from the article from GQ, like there was a line in there where the author writes, it's less about it's less about titillation and like more about confession. Like, hands as a gateway to the person,
Mm,
which I thought was very, very interesting. Like the last sentence was like, in a world increasingly substituting intimacy with chatbots, spoon-offs, and AI rendered photos, a hand looks like a real thing. And it just made me think of like something else I've been thinking about is like this picture of a hand, like it takes effort to then kind of think about like what this person is going to be like. It's not that immediate like doping
sure.
hit.
Yeah. It gives you enough of an indicator to what the person is likely to be like, but you have to turn your imagination on. You have to project in a way that
Yeah.
is evocative of a whole person from this very small amount of detail.
Yeah, yeah. It's like the suggestion of thing. And then like so Jerry Kwok, like the founder of Omen, the startup that I've like been consulting for, he was writing an article about like drawing upon I think like Reggie James as well, like on the friction corridor. But basically like to just give you some like context, like Omen makes blind boxes of like luxury and like fashion goods.
Sure.
Um and like the concept behind it, which I find interesting, is that like there's serendipity within constraints. Like there is very good curation of what's on offer, but at the same time, like the point is like now, like if you're presented with everything that you want to see on the same page, you're like you kind of don't want it anymore. So like I think there is like the act of pulling something from a blind box and not necessarily knowing that you're gonna get what you want is like a form of friction
Hmm.
that like it's kind of the same as if you went to a thrift store and picked something out. But like what appealed to me about it was like, and I'm thinking about this broader concept of friction, like more generally, like whether it's the hand thing
Sure.
or like, before we were talking about, um, like us being like dumber again, like
Sure.
because everything is just so like sloppy. I think there is like perhaps what the true thing that I'm grasping on this month also is like people actually secretly like crave effort because everything comes too easily. They don't want it
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's like it's like that famous scientifically proven study, which I can't cite, but which I am very familiar with, about IKEA furniture and the emotional attachment that people have to IKEA furniture because they have taken the time to put the furniture together. They value this commodity good much more than they would otherwise an object that just shows up fully formed, right? Like the effort is
Mm,
the value, um, in a
mm,
lot of respects, particularly in things that, you know, you would not otherwise be able to synthesize, um, without the sort of prefabrication. Yeah, that's it.
mm.
The friction is the value.
The friction is the value. Like it just like yeah, I think mysticism and friction and magic all coming together. Like honestly, like I mean, take this like kind of full circle. Like I think we're still very much in like this like near dark ages, and like it's becoming like I was talking to my friend Alex Sound from like Mouthwash Studio, and we're like working on
Mm,
something as well. But we're like thinking about like if we're in this like near dark age or near medieval society, like who would be the like oracles? Who would be this like is the court jesters of the meme, like the court jesters of the meme is like the courtesans are the OnlyFans models. Who are the knights? Like who's the castle? Like the dragon is the dragon AI? Like all of these kind of things.
I just saw an Instagram video this morning. and I don't know the creator's name, but it was a Bene Gesserit, Bene Gesserit, Bene Gesserit, I think, the Dune,
That is,
like
yeah, yeah.
conversation between the same woman in different costume, talking about why Larry Ellison wanted to buy entertainment companies, and it delves into conspiracy theory with him having been working on the CIA to owning databases to then creating lookalike people and audiences to populate entertainment to entertain and narcotize the masses. But all of which is like, it's not to say that it's standard conspiracy thinking or even big business strategy. I think you can argue that it's both. But
Mm.
the fact that it had to be placed in this conversation with an oracle stolen from a science fiction epic, I thought was pretty interesting. It's like if we and it gets to the high low thing, right? It's like if we can't understand it via this lowbrow entertainment vehicle, then we can't be bothered to understand it at all.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, but I mean, I guess, like what we said like earlier, like there's levels to it, right? I'm excited
Yeah, for
to
sure.
like read to read David Marks's like new book.
It's very. I'm about 125 pages in, and it's doing a lot. Like the interesting thing about covering the present from so close a vantage is that the near past from so close a vantage is that it is, I think, harder to parse what's really important and what's simply corollary. And like the thing that I loved about Amatora was that when you boiled it down, it was the story of like five guys in Japan in 1948 who made a world that then went on to inform the present in such in this fascinating way. And he distills it a little bit to New York in 2000, 2001, but it gets very broad. So I'm interested to talk to him about that on Friday when we chat. One thing, by the way, you mentioned full circle earlier, and I want to end on the third article that you pointed out, which was the idea that the TradWife movement is sputtering, and we are now on to the next thing. What is it about TradWives that jumped at you there, or that article?
I mean, I like the thing that jumped out at me to like towards that article was like kind of this thing of like there is this like manufactured idea of like rebellion that was like very like tradwives, they like claim to be counterculture, but like you can't really like in most of the world, and like I would say like the nuclear family is still like the standard structure, so like you can't
Sure.
claim to be counterculture when you are still culture. I think that was the thing that like immediately just jumped out to me. Like that was, very well pointed out by the article as well. But yeah, again, like it made me consider like, one of the questions I was posing in the article was like, can you have counterculture like online? And like, it included that to be countercultural was to refuse spectacle, which was like to basically not turn your life into fuel for platforms. And so like, again, like going back to the LARPing workshop, I wonder if like the true counterculture is like just completely faking it
Hmm. Okay. So performance as camouflage,
as counterculture.
camouflage as counterculture. Interesting. Interesting. But yeah, well, ironically, one of my critiques or one of my observations about Gavin McInnes, my former colleague, who David writes about in that book, is that he entered into a performance and became about the performance to such a degree that it eventually subsumed him and he became
Mm,
the character. So I think that I don't think you're wrong, but I also think the danger is quite clear.
you like lose yourself in the yeah
Well, yeah, I
yeah
mean, but
but
in
yeah
a counterculture performance, you become A, something different, and B, oppositional to your initial mission.
I think maybe like maybe I was like just like to be truly to counterculture, you have to sacrifice. Like I'm thinking about it in the term like yeah, it was just a quick thought that popped into my mind while reading it. But I was like, if you think about counterculture as in not just culture that's counter the establishment, but actually like how countering existing culture, perhaps that requires some level of like sacrificing yourself because.
Well, it
But
must, and I think that this is the real like modern dynamic. I was talking about, I can't remember who I was talking to. Somebody recently. Oh, the strategist Gray Broderick, who you may know, or whose work you may know, and then Sammy Rice from who writes Snake and
oh yeah, yeah,
Superhealth, the
yeah, yeah.
newsletters. I had a conversation with the art critic Carla McCormick one time at a party upstate, where he talked about being a critic and a journalist, and he basically was like, you have to take a vow of poverty in order to do this. And I am like elementally, I disagree with that at an elemental level. Like I do
Yeah.
not think that's true at all. But I
I do have
do.
a question for you,
But
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 I'll let you
but I
finish first.
well, just to finish the thought, but I do think you're right in that you have to sacrifice something meaningful and notable and valuable in order to gain the right level of critical distance, let's call it, to be able
Mm,
to say it. It's just that I don't think the thing you have to sacrifice is, you know, quality of life or comfort or, you know, whatever. I think there are ways to walk the line more elegantly than that. But anyway, what were you going to ask?
mm. Well, I was actually thinking like while I was reading like Our Status and Culture, like I so like David like yes like David Marks like splits the classes into like old money, new money, da 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 da. But like one of the like I guess developments I'm thinking of, and maybe they fall into the professional class or creative class, like professional class, like that he talks about. But I feel like there is this group of people which I feel like have very like mysterious sources of income that have like ultra high like cultural capital. When it comes to economic capital, like like it's almost like completely opaque. Like this person could be a billionaire, this person be like super crypto rich, this person could be living
Sure.
with like 7 roommates somewhere. I think I'm not, and like that part of like that kind of, and maybe like you tell me like what you think about this, but like I'm just like I'm wondering where you think that those kind of people like fit in, because I feel like there's this class of people that has thrown out by the internet has been able to like kind of transcend this old money dichotomy by having like the economic capital of money, but like showing not the signs of like new money, but also being more
Sure.
powerful than the traditional like professional class that Marx is writing about, or like the bourgeois bohemian from I think it was like, well, it's 20 years ago, like Bovis in Paradise. You know the book, yeah.
Yeah, sure. I don't I don't know how to answer that exactly or how to respond to it, because I don't know there's even really a question so much as just like a rhetorical point. The what occurs to me is that there have always been lots of people who achieved a level of success and a level of comfort and a level of status that was, commensurate with what we would think of as high now, who kept their mouths shut and just kept on working. The thing that brings their absence into relief, or maybe the secretness of that behavior into relief, is that you now have a billionaire class that is so loud, and like a have class that is so loud, and a have not class that is so loud that it illustrates the deficit in between them in a way that hasn't typically been the case. But that's my initial reaction. It's interesting. It's a place to think about for sure.
Mm.
Like where is the secret?
Yeah.
Where is the secret upper middle class, or where is the the where is the silent majority, I guess, is sort of an interesting way to think about it, to put it in, 70s terms.
Yeah. I'll have to like kind of just articulate it more cleanly, I think. But it was just all kind of squared off, like, just people with like, I mean, it's more like maybe they could have family money, or they could have like, it could just be more traditional sources of wealth as well. But it just made me, yeah, I think
Yeah, well, so it's a little. I mean,
in
look, I mean, just
amongst,
to put a really succinct sort of point to it, it's like, who is eating at all of these restaurants? Like, I mean, given the cost of life right this minute, like, who are these people? Where does this, like, how does this work? And
exactly. And
it's
they're
not
like,
easy to discern.
yeah, exactly. It's not easy to discern. And so I feel like there is some sort of like strata going on that like I haven't been able to articulate yet,
A
but
secret,
that might form the basis
a,
of meme.
yeah, a secret strata. Interesting. All right. Well, we need to leave it with the secret strata because, Evan, we could obviously talk forever, but it's now 2 a.m. your time, so I should let you get to bed. Where can the people find you before we take off?
Um, Find me on nostalgia.express. I also post on well, like all three platforms: LinkedIn, Twitter, and now Instagram. Thanks, Eugene. And also, if you're in Hong Kong, Omen is throwing a launch party at a secret location on Friday. So if you have any friends that are around, please shoot them our way.
Nice. Oh, yeah. Send
Yeah,
send me the details on that, and I'll put it in the newsletter for everybody to check out there too. Um, well, listen, Edmund, it's been a pleasure, and you are a rock star for staying up late and committing to the bit, as we say.
for
Um,
sure, for sure.
but it's a pleasure. Look, you had a couple of people in the comments already say that they're stoked to read this paper you're working on, or whatever form it is, your luxury meme that you're going to publish about low, what is it, new money and old money, sorry. Yeah.
No
um
money on money. Yeah,
and then next time you're back in New York, let's we'll get together, because I don't think my
for
travels are
sure.
going to take
Let's
me to
hang.
Hong Kong anytime soon, but we will.
Cross paths soon. All right. Okay.
All right,
Talk to you
bud,
soon, man.
talk soon. Bye.
See ya. Bye.